Hello, a very warm welcome to Fireside Chats. I am Magela Pillai, and I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Sister Denise, an experienced practitioner of Rajyoga Meditation. Today's topic is a very fascinating one entitled The Enlightened Witness. In this series, we look at a variety of subjects surrounding spirituality. We look at how spirituality affects you, the individual, and what impact it has on your consciousness. We also look at and ask you to look at what your relationship is with God and how you can have a more deeper and meaningful relationship with Him. Sister Denise, a very warm welcome to today's show.
Thank you.
The Enlightened Witness. The words itself carries a lot of power with it. What does that mean to you?
Two things. One is this practice of being a witness. So a witness is not involved in whatever they're seeing. And then an enlightened witness is one who has such a capacity to interpret the big picture as well as the actual scene that's going on, as well as being completely uninvolved, as well as being able to see exactly what's happening. And this is one of the very important practices of Raj Yoga.
The term enlightened witness, who is witnessing who? Who is watching who?
Well, in a way, you are detaching yourself from the character that you're performing, because when you're practicing to be the enlightened witness, observing a scene, you're also part of that scene. When you are involved and still you practice to be the enlightened witness, it means that the scene is not able to overcome you. You're not getting pulled into any kind of emotional reaction to what is going on, and you're able to perform actions in an absolutely stable stage, which are completely coherent according to that scene, in order to cause that scene to have a good outcome. That's really what it's about.
Okay, Sister Denise, why engage in this practice in the first place? What will be your motivation for doing that?
Well, the motivation is that normally you're not enlightened and you're not a witness. You're caught up in it. For example, someone is insulting you, you're going to feel insulted. You might get provoked to give back as good as you get. You might see only what's right in front of you. You may not be able to have the distance to understand and recognize any misunderstandings that may have produced the situation. You would also be very clear about the karmic account settlement dimension of the situation. And when you're caught in these things, then you will make mistakes, you will do actions that you will later regret. So the whole reason why to develop this practice is to avoid regrets, is to make sure that what you do in the middle of a very tense or intense situation are still very coherent and dispassionate and correct.
Sister Denise, when one looks at the way we normally function, observing oneself is not something that we're taught from a young age. It's a learned skill. In order to do the practice that you just described, does one teach oneself this? And how do you go about doing it? Because you are yourself, to create a split and watch yourself is sounds a bit odd.
We have a concept which is called the knowledge of drama. The knowledge of drama means that everything that's going on is to be considered the same way as a theatre or a film. And then you consider yourself to be an actor. So you're an actor in some scene or some situation. You need to make sure that the actions you do are exactly the way the director wants you to do, because that's the contract between the actor and the director. Now, our director is God, and God will say, okay, I'm going to put you in a very tense, intense, difficult situation, and I want to see how you handle it, because you're going to get graded in the spiritual university. God is the teacher and is grading you on how you handle situations. And of course, they're real life situations. But you have to consider there's a drama going on. Consider you're an actor and you're getting graded. And you want to make sure that you act in this scene in such a way that the outcome of the scene is very good. So you have to make sure that the karma that you perform is according to you, not according to the provocations that will be in the scene. Understand?
Yes, yes.
You want to be a certain way, but the scene destabilizes you, then the way you are is dictated to by the circumstances or the scene. And then it would be said that you don't get a good grade or you get a fail mark, because what you need to be doing is to cause the outcome of that scene to go the way that you want it, which means your action has to cause that to happen. So you're being evaluated on your ability to act independently of what you are perceiving through your sense organs. And instead of that, it is the enlightened wisdom that you have within yourself that dictates how you handle the scene. And this is where your merit lies.
What are the other parts that you are witnessing within? Is there a witness is like an audience? Is there a director? Is there a producer? Because it's a very fresh way of looking at the self, which well, most people don't. So could you explain the other bits that make up the whole you?
What's happening here is that the self is the enlightened witness. The self has the sense organs through which you get your information and through which you perform your actions. Then you have your mind, which is very influenced by the sensory input, and you guide your mind from the inside. Then you have your intellect, your understanding, which is the one that instrument that uses the mind so that you perceive what you want to perceive, so that the intellect will focus the mind or direct it somewhere and not somewhere else. And then you have the sanskaras, which is your grooves, the way you normally behave. And we were talking on another occasion about how the people who are looking at crimes and so on, they have a way of seeing that the way people behave is a particular way. So you can detect who did what by how it was done. So this is what sanskaras are. And so when you are adopting the pose of the enlightened witness, a part of what you want to do is no longer do what you normally do. So your intellect contains the information that you're using, the enlightenment. Your mind has to be withdrawn from your sense perceptions and focused on what the intellect wants the mind to focus on. The sanskaras, which normally guide the mind, are intercepted by the directives of the intellect, which says to the mind, don't listen to your regular tendencies, listen to me and do what I say, you see. And then the enlightened witness is presiding over all this, and the test is, can you fulfill this assignment, or do you get destabilized, or do you break down in the middle of it, or whatever? So the grade you get is determined by how well you perform this operation. Do you understand?
So Denise, listening to you, it appears that you are teaching yourself and the viewer, or showing the viewer, an entirely different way to be.
Yes.
Why? What was wrong with the way human beings normally function?
What's wrong is you're a slave of your perceptions. When you're a slave of your perceptions, you operate under the dictates of sense perceptions, which are misleading. And then you start to do action, which later you realize that wasn't the right thing to do, so then you regret. So that's not how you want to operate. You want to operate as a master. And so this practice of being the enlightened witness enables you to gather together your capacities and to direct them in the scene of action exactly the way you want it to be, so that there is no room for mistakes, regrets, and not perceiving clearly what's going on.
In order for someone to engage in such an intense personal exercise, it does come across that such a person who does what you just said is investing a lot of energy into him or herself. Why is this? And what would be the motivating factor to come to this state?
This is what spirituality says. It says that there's basically nothing you can do about what anybody else is doing, but you are absolutely responsible for what you are doing yourself. And so if you focus your attention on yourself and you do exactly what you think you're doing, you know what you're doing, you are anyway going to receive the consequences of your actions. You're not going to receive the consequences of somebody else's actions, but of your own. But normally people think, oh, I'm getting the consequences of somebody else's actions, but that's actually illogical.
Okay. In this context, do you believe that, how does that expression go? Do not visit upon the sons the sins of their fathers.
No, it's slightly different. The sins of the fathers are visited upon their sons.
Okay.
And that is a strange expression, but in Raj Yoga we can understand what that means, you see, because the sins of your father will be learnt by you.
So it's vicarious.
Not even vicarious, but you will copy, because the influence of your parents are enormous. And in most people's parents are a mixture of good and bad, right? And so if you're, say for example, your father engages in bribery and corruption, so you will be aware of that. Your father is your external moral authority. So your father is teaching you what is right and wrong anyway, then demonstrating bribery and corruption without saying, or even with saying, don't do this because it's wrong, but I'm going to do this because it's expedient. So what you're actually doing is saying to the child, tell people that it's wrong, but actually do it. You know, so this creates a double standards, and there are a lot of people who operate in double standards, and so the sins of that father will be copied by that child because of the influence being so powerful. And there are many situations where children will say, you know, my parents do these things and I will never do them, and lo and behold, they do exactly the same thing. So how do you intercept this process? You have to be so conscious and so careful at every step and so aware of the influences that you are carrying with you. And actually this is one of the big reasons why it is said to a practitioner of Raj Yoga that mother and father are actually actors in the drama, they're not really your mother and father, they're souls who play that role, but your real mother and father is God. So put yourself under the influence of God in such a way that the influence of your physical parents is completely neutralized. There's the only way to not have the sins of the father visited upon the children.
When one is going about one's normal day of functioning, and you have created the inner observer, the enlightened witness, what happens is that your observer has, say, this amount of power, but the force of your habits often erupt with volcanic force. Say, for example, one has the trait of a quick temper. Okay, so you would like to be somebody who is calm and a harmonious and amicable personality, but yet you have a quick temper which you want to neutralize. How do you increase the power of the observer in order to offset a negative trait?
What happens is, when you're practicing to be the detached observer, the enlightened witness, you practice it over a period of years. And your quick temper has been going on also for years. So your quick temper is going to overcome your incipient enlightened witness quite a lot. And then you will say, well, I'm not doing too well. I need to get more power. I need to do more yoga. Because the more yoga you do, the more light and power you take from God, the more your accumulated power offsets the power of that tendency. So you need to practice, you need to accumulate power, and you need to have tests. Because you may fail the test 100 times, but 101 you pass. Then the test comes again, 102, 103, 150, 250. You have to pass quite a few times before that tendency is clearly getting weak. And a point comes where it's been neutralized.
Okay. Sister Denise, you stated as to why one should engage in emerging the enlightened witness, but at the end of this journey, what is the aim of a person who has emerged the inner enlightened witness? Where is he heading? What does he want to become? Because his outcome will be very different from somebody who's, for want of a better word, ordinary, and who doesn't practice this.
Well, his outcome is that he is highly skilled in mastering his circumstances, so his outcome will be a master. This is how you become a master. That's the aim. You want to become the king over your inner kingdom, your mind, your intellect, your sanskaras, your feelings, all of this. You are the ruler, and everything goes according to how you say. If you're not the ruler, then you have a chaos in your kingdom, which is most people having that.
Okay. Thus far, you mentioned how one goes about handling external circumstances. How does one manage what goes on in your inner world? Say if you're a person who suffers from severe depression, and this has been going on for decades, and your mother had it and you have it and your 10-year-old daughter also has it. Now, how does emerging the enlightened witness help in that scenario where there is no, well, there may be external factors, but say
No, but
there
the thing is this: if somebody has severe depression, they go to the doctor. They don't come and learn Raj Yoga. Once they've sorted out their severe depression, they may be in a position to work with Raj Yoga. Raj Yoga is not a substitute for the doctor.
Let me give you another example. If somebody is has a negative habit within them that is doesn't necessarily come from outside, but they would like to neutralize inside. How do they go about that using the Enlightened Witness?
Well, let's go to depression as opposed to severe depression, because there's a major difference between those two. And you feel depressed, and you also have thoughts that feed that feeling of depression, as well as thoughts that created it. Now, if you practiced in being the Enlightened Witness, you'll catch it very quickly that, oh, self, mind, you're producing depressing thoughts. Stop that. And what the intellect will be guided to do by the Enlightened Witness is, okay, let's put in some thoughts which are going to bring the soul to a normal state, give the mind a lot of reason why not to be depressed, because when you feel depressed, it's because you're thinking depressing thoughts. And if you stop doing that and start thinking about, you know, the good things that are going on, appreciate what you have rather than get depressed about what you temporarily don't have, you know, then you're really bringing yourself onto the right track, you see. And the Enlightened Witness will note it probably more quickly than somebody who's not practicing this, and give the instruction, okay, now we need to really pay attention and produce thoughts which are much more correct in terms of the larger picture. You don't have any reason to get depressed over this trivial thing. Look at what you've got. You know, talk to yourself in this way, and the feeling of depression will go away quite quickly.
So yourself, apart from the Enlightened Witness, your self-talk also has to change.
Well, yeah, because the Enlightened Witness can, you know, give instructions to the different parts of the consciousness to do stuff which they need to be doing.
In order to fulfill this practice of being an Enlightened Witness, one's attention has to be on your inner world all the time. It's not a part-time job, it's a full-time job. Okay? From the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed. How do you live then in the outside world, because you have a life?
Well, it's not that you have to be full on focused on this 24 hours a day 100%, not at all. You can dip in and out in between different other activities. That is completely adequate. But you know, every time you do an action, it has a beginning, a continuation, and then it's over. And in between the one action being over and the next action starting, there is a space. And that space may be half a second. That's enough to go inside as the Enlightened Witness, see what's going on, give any directions to the self, and carry on. Because every time you do something, it is the soul himself who is doing that action. And you cannot do an action unless you think that this is what I'm going to do, and then do it. But it's very fast. So the big problem is when the mind is full of waste thoughts or negative thoughts or chaotic thoughts, there's the actual energy of the mind is fragmented and just noisy. So part of the focus and purpose of meditation is to think only those thoughts that are worth thinking. And if you have to think something, once is enough. You know, tell yourself, okay, don't think depressing thoughts. Okay, I won't think depressing thoughts. Then if you start thinking depressing thoughts again, then you have to tell yourself again. So gradually, as you practice, the arrangements in your inner world become set up, and your different components understand who's in charge, you see. And the Enlightened Witness is a good leader.
Last question. How does God fit into this picture?
God is an enlightened witness. God knows how everything goes, what's happening, what's going to happen. All the souls are God's children. There are many who are suffering. There are many who are severely misbehaving. And God has to bear that and not interfere with what's going on, because everyone has their predestined role in drama.
Thank you for an extremely enlightening half an hour. So there you go. Whether you call this practice the detached observer, or whether you call it being an enlightened witness, Sister Denise has shared the importance of observing what's going on in your inner world, and then giving directions to your inner director, your intellect and your mind, as to which way to go. I hope today's talk has been of some relevance to you, and this is not a practice that one can achieve overnight. It does take years before one can fully and truly master it, but Sister Denise has stated that you are worth it. I do wish you everything of the best on your own spiritual quest. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.